the last couple of times through Glasgow to ignites. So they transport about between 4 and 8 nuclear weapons through the middle of the city. And we don't have to just look away when things like the Duke run aground and Sky, you know, we can actually stand up to these things. Jim Murphy talks about our independent nuclear deterrent, and both these independent and deterrents are nonsense. Trident's the American system, all the components are American, detailed work I've done. The nuclear warheads themselves, there's 3 of the key bits of the nuclear warhead, detailed work so you think, oh, hang on, can we actually use it ourselves anyway? Declassified files from the early 80s, when they were acquiring Trident. Independence means 12 months supply of spare parts. That's how it's defined in the official papers. So we can operate it for 12 months and then it just starts withering away. And in fact, because of the software dependence, it's probably far quicker. It relies on data every 24 hours from the States. So if America pulls the plug, then actually the system certainly becomes very inaccurate quickly and probably becomes completely unworkable within a matter of months or 12 months or so. One of the big issues that you use now, and we hear quite a bit on the streets, well, what about Russia? You know, do we not need these things because of Putin and what he's doing? And I'm certainly concerned about sort of Russian intervention in Ukraine and so forth. But you have to say, what would it have been like if there were still nuclear weapons in Ukraine? It wouldn't have stopped the position. If you can imagine the scenes in Crimea, where you had units, military units, what side are they on? Are they on this side or that side? You have militia, you have special forces. There used to be nuclear weapons there at Balaclava. If there were still nuclear weapons in one of these bases, and there's this ambiguity, which side are these on? Are they on the Russian side or the Ukrainian side? That's going to make it better? No, it's not. Nicholas Sturgeon put it very well quite recently. Basically, adding nuclear weapons to any situation of conflict never makes it better. It's always going to be
Sorry about that.
Why do we have all these arguments about reasons that are really superficial? The reason Britain has nuclear weapons is because of status. This is what Tony Blair said in his biography. Giving up nuclear weapons is too big a downgrading of our status. That's always been the argument. If you look through the archives in the last 50 years, it's always about Britain's place, particularly Britain's place relative to France and Germany. You know, we're big players in Europe. The idea of France being the only nuclear weapons power, that's unthinkable. You know, it's very much in that sort of big boys' toys area. But interestingly, that's not an argument that they can, that's what's behind it, but they can't always say it. The chap called David Broucher, who was the British disarmament ambassador, and he was interviewed by the Defence Committee, and he was absolutely damning this. Britain needs nuclear weapons to have a seat on the Security Council. And this former British ambassador basically said this is a pernicious argument, because if you say we need nuclear weapons to be a big power, you are saying to every country in the world, if you want to be important, what you need to do is acquire nuclear weapons. So it doesn't stand up at all. It's not only something that we should be doing, it's the wrong thing to focus on, but it's also setting completely the wrong example. Hans Blix, if people remember from the Iraq war days, Hans Blix said for us to be talking to North Korea and others, it's like smoking a big pack cigar and telling your children not to smoke. Jim Murphy's line, maintaining the UK independent must be part of our effort to reach multilateral disarmament. He said something very similar last night, actually, very much this, yes, we need multilateral disarmament, but of course we've got to spend, don't get replaced these things. And they said, so long as we live in an uncertain world, we need nuclear weapons. So in other words, when human beings develop the ability to predict the future, then we won't need nuclear weapons. Insurance policy in an uncertain world, that's the other one that they trot out. But basically, as an insurance policy, this is a con man tricking you into signing up to this insurance policy. It's completely useless, it's very expensive, and doesn't actually provide any cover for the real threats. You know, if people are worried about cyber warfare and terrorism and climate change and everything else, this is completely irrelevant to all men. Jobs is another one. We've got the jobs figures in FY requests a couple of years back. 520 civilian jobs directly relying on Trident. We can do work with the SGC, but how to address the jobs issue, so I'll maybe come back to that and put one more on it. At the end of the day, it destroys jobs. Use the same amount of money for something else, create more jobs. This fundamental issue, nuclear weapons are a deterrent. It's something that is stated, but it's not something that there's any proof of. Scarecrow, hanging garlic outside, all these other things, they might be a deterrent, they might work. The most damning critique of this came from a chap called Lee Butler. Lee Butler was in charge of all-American, operational command of all-American nuclear weapons at the end of the Cold War. He's actually the guy who signed off the things to get rid of thousands of nuclear weapons at the end of the Cold War. And he must have been regretting the fact that he didn't strike out more, because there was a lot of disarmament in sort of 1991 when he was in charge. And he talks about it in theological terms, as a faith. They're all sort of indoctrinated into his faith and they believe it all. But since he retired, he came out with absolutely damning statements about it. The deterrence, in Cold War terms, was fatally flawed. It's a dialogue between the blind and the deaf. Basically, Russia and America were thinking two different ways. So the idea that they weren't thinking the same way. Deterrence is just a parlor trick. It's just a word with things that people repeat. It's semantic cover for them. And the last bit he came out with, which was about the sort of post-war, they cling to deterrence, clutch its standard promise to the breast, shake it wistfully at bygone adversaries, and balefully at new or imagined ones. And Lee Butler was very recently giving a speech to an international conference, so he's still saying the same things. What we're faced with now is not just carrying on with what we've got, but building new submarines with decision in 2016. The MPs that we elected may then make the decision a year later about new submarines. This is a very interesting one. One of the standard lines is, all we are doing is replacing the submarines. We're not building new nuclear weapons, no nuclear missiles. This is a speech given by the head of the programme in 2007. That was the first version I got that was redacted. It was blacked out with tensor pen. I challenged that under FOI and they didn't actually release it. The intention is to replace the entire Vanguard class system, including the warhead and missile. So that's what the head of the programme said in 2007. Yet you still get people saying only the submarine, and Ruth Davison a couple of days ago was saying only the submarine. It's not true. That's a rough breakdown of the timescale we're talking about. So we're part of the way through. The whole thing started in 2004, the Mutual Defence Agreement. And once they've got these new submarines, I've seen a projection which basically has the date of 2067. That's when they would say we withdraw from service. So we're really talking about 50 years. Apart from everything else, they're spending £21 billion at the moment in ordnance. That's not picked up very much. All the Russians $1 billion a year at the moment that they're spending, completely rebuilding all of the nuclear weapons facilities. The annual spending of nuclear weapons used to be around $1 billion a year. It's now about $3 billion a year, and it will rise to $4 billion a year early 2020s. And then if you look at the through-life cost of the replacement system, you're in that sort of 100 billion. For several years I've been doing various sums that come up with 100 billion, so I was just working out. But it's of that order. And interesting, when it was first been said, it's been challenged, folks say, no, you're exaggerating. But the 100 billion is pretty well accepted now. But what's the real cost? What's the alternatives? Basically, £100 billion, you could treat 3.3 million cancer patients. And I'm actually a patient of cancer esophagus, so I know my own treatment is extremely expensive. So that's proper treatment for millions of cancer patients with that sort of money. Or dementia was another example, 116,000 dementia patients every year for 50 years, both healthcare and social care. Well, what about other, the jobs issue? Well, instead of these people that get paid at the moment, you could be paying the wages of 77,000 nurses for 50 years, or about 60,000 teachers for the same period of time. And this is a comment from Douglas Alexander very recently. He was being pushed by Andrew Marr. I lose my sense of time now, whether it was last weekend or the one before, but it's quite recently. And Andrew Marr was saying, what are you going to cut? What are you going to cut? And he came up with a couple of things. One of them was the entitlement for pensioners' benefits if they're better off. But the other one was child, but not cutting child benefit, but stealing You know, and he was clearly, if he wanted to say we'll reduce spending on nuclear weapons, he could say it. You know, Mar was given the opportunity, but what he said is we're basically going to put these limits on child benefit. So Douglas Alexander, as the campaign manager for the Labour campaign, is saying, well, the priority is bombs and not bears. Just to finish on a more positive note, this is a group of folk at an international conference in Vienna last year. The one on the left-hand side is Rebecca Sharkey from the International Campaign for Get Nuclear Weapons based in London. Angus Robertson, no, that's Flavia, who works with me, who was over at the conference, and Bill Kidd. So we've had several people from Scotland attending these international conferences. The first one was in 2013 in Oslo, the second one in Mexico, and there's the third one in Vienna. And they've had between 120 and 150 countries attending. The first two, the P5 countries, Britain, America, Russia, China, France, boycotted. But the initiatives coming from non-nuclear weapon states, so non-nuclear weapon states are saying, we want to look at what the effects of its humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons. We're going to gather together and look at what the effects of these things are. And the conclusion being, we can't possibly respond adequately. The Red Cross, everybody else, we can't respond to what happens in the nuclear explosion. But what has happened is that process has moved on. So the Vienna conference is basically came up with a pledge to say that they should move to ban nuclear weapons. So there is currently a concerted international move to prohibit nuclear weapons. Now the countries that sign up, so about 50 countries have backed that Austrian pledge. Now the movers is Austria, South Africa, Brazil. There's a number of countries that are playing a key role in it. It may well be what will happen is they will sign a treaty saying we're banning nuclear weapons. We might not have any, but we're banning them with a view to then leading to prohibition, which is what happened with landmines and cluster bombs. That first of all you ban them and then you eliminate them. So there's actually a very positive international dimension to this. So my feeling is that Scotland isn't alone in saying we want rid of these things. Scotland is actually in line with what most countries in the world want. It's the people who, you know, we think it's making a sort of normal status quo. What had happened, they're the odd ones out. We're actually the normal people. And we can sort of do what we can to try to get that message across. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. Given the fact that there were a lot of numbers given there, would you mind, Kat, if people asked any questions that they wanted just now, while things are fresh in their mind?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yes.
Surely it's a simple thing that England will never give up nuclear weapons, never, ever, ever.
They've got a problem with the base here. And what the military people are saying is basically it's really difficult to move them. So, and this is why there's a key issue with the independence argument, because if Scotland's independent, the bottom line is we can say we don't want to be, they've got to go. As an independent country, we could do that. That was the argument of the referendum campaign.
If we hold the arsenal, England presses the button. We have plenty of Scots who are capable of captaining subs. Any sub anywhere in the world, plenty of Scots ships captains who could easily do the job.
Well, I think our position, and you know, not just sort of personally in terms of the SNP and most of the independence movement, is we don't want them. We want rid of them. And I think the thing is that we can actually, certainly in the independence context, we can do it. We can certainly kick up a fuss about it in this context of a Westminster election and how we return MPs. Actually achieving it is still a pretty big ask within that context, but within independence it's definitely achievable.
We all keep them right.
Okay, Ellen.
I think the information, John, that you gave on nuclear weapons, you know, how many are on subs, these subs pass a lot of our houses, and I don't think that information is out there. You know, I don't think people understand that actually the amount of, what we're talking about, 140 in total, and that they're actually trained on particular cities in the world, and there was a lot of information in your presentation, and I just wondered how to get that out to further afield.
I would certainly put it online and things, but there's a limit. Certainly in terms of getting things out of the media, it's slightly odd. I worked with Rob Edwards quite a bit. He was a journalist at Sunday Herald. So we can get stories about various radiation leaks and safety things, get that out. But sometimes getting more basic things out is harder. You get some sort of eye as to what the journalists consider a story, which is sometimes more difficult, to actually communicate more basic things.
Sorry, John, in your presentation you mentioned about the convoys coming through Glasgow to supply fast lane. Is the fission material actually manufactured in England for that?
Yeah, so in terms of the production stage, what you've got, Aldermaston itself makes a plutonium pitch, which is a sphere about that size of plutonium, which is the centre of the warhead. There's also a second bit, which is highly enriched uranium, which is the fusion stage. So the fissile material is made or processed at Aldermaston. There's a plant a couple of miles down the road for Burfield. What they do there is to put the high explosive around it and assemble all the parts. And what you end up with something about that high, like a traffic cone, is what the actual complete warhead is. And then those complete warheads are what travels through central Glasgow. They can do minor monitoring and replacing some of the components at Coalport. So they can do some work at Coalport.
Can I ask a quick question on numbers, John, just before we go to Kat? We'll have a longer question and answer later. I remember that the all-party committee from last year that decided that in principle we wanted to go ahead with the replacement, they costed it at $4 billion a year and gave a lifespan of 40 years, giving a total of £160 billion. It stuck in my mind at the time, and in fact we used that very number in a number of posters that we did during the Yes campaign. Is that wrong?
You're probably including inflation to do that.
Well, that's fine.
So there's a different way to do it. If you start including inflation, what they call outturn costs and things like that, then you get even higher figures. That's probably
right. Okay, thanks. We'll come back to some further questions later. I'd like to introduce to you Kat Boyd, to my left, co-founder of the Radical Independence Campaign and a trade union activist. She's actually been here in Argyll today, being an activist. Is that right? And she was one of the main speakers at the event on Saturday in Glasgow, but presumably not the one that was introduced as the most dangerous woman in Britain. So over to you, Kat.
Thanks very much. What's your signing, Carol, please?
Boyd.
Boyd, thank you.
No worries. Well, thanks very much for inviting me to speak today. And like you said, I was speaking at the rally on Saturday in Glasgow on behalf of the Radical Independence Campaign. And it felt like quite a significant moment for me, particularly in that square, because that square for me represents a lot of the times that people have stood up together for what's right. It's where I remember going to see Nelson Mandela being given the keys to the city of Glasgow. I remember that moment with my mum and dad. I remember sitting down on the street outside the square itself during the anti-war movement against the illegal invasion of Iraq. And it was really significant. I felt that, again, here was people standing up for what was right. And that's the place in the city that I live in that centres your focus. It's a space where you can start to dictate the political narrative, when you have enough people there to say there's an alternative, there's another voice. And I think that the turnout shows that something quite spectacular is happening in Scotland, and that the referendum might be over, but something has changed forever. And Saturday's demonstration is the first in a series of actions that are called by the Scrap Trident Coalition. And Saturday was the first opportunity we've had this year to say that. It's this one word that I keep hearing after the referendum, and it's small and it's quiet, but it's so powerful, and I think it's enough. That's the feeling that I get on the streets, that's the feeling I get when I'm out speaking to people, is that people are saying enough of this, enough of the way things are. And at the last Radical Independence conference, when we closed the conference, we left people with a vow, and we called it the People's Vow, because we still don't accept that the politicians who made their own vow on the front of the Daily Record, had ordinary people's best interests at heart. And one of the points in our people's vow was the following. We will not let politicians or their friends in NATO use Scotland as a dumping ground for nuclear weapons. And if politicians fail to act in 2015, we will be part of an intensive campaign of civil disobedience against Trident. And that was the promise that we made at that conference with 3,000 people at it. And that is what we're going to do. There's a huge gulf in the opinions of politicians at Westminster and ordinary people on the issue of Trident. John's already outlined that this is not a priority for the majority of people. And on Saturday, when we said enough, it felt like there was more force behind it than there has been in a long time, and that there's more hope in front of us than there's been since the referendum. And I feel like I've had enough of politicians constantly saying there's no alternative to austerity, when you know that those submarines, how much they cost, how much will be poured into them as ordinary folk are bearing the brunt of austerity. And for me, Trident is a symbol of Britain's economic failure, where successive governments have cared more about providing space and shelter for their nuclear weapons than they have about providing homes for their citizens. And during the referendum, and Jim Murphy's already been mentioned probably far too often tonight already, so apologies. But when he was the Shadow Secretary for International Development at the beginning of the referendum campaign, he said this: getting rid of Trident will be a fatal blow for Faslane and cost thousands of jobs on the west coast of Scotland. That's really what Jim Murphy thinks, and whenever he goes in Scotland, I want someone to remind him of it. What he conveniently leaves out of that sentence, what he conveniently seems to ignore, is all of the evidence, all the work that people like John have done, showing, like the report, the CND working with the Scottish Trade Union Congress on a report that categorically shows Trident costs jobs. The amount of money and resources that go into that pull from other parts of the economy, and Trident industrially makes us worse off. The UK spends more than all but 3 other countries in the world on its military capabilities. These arguments for me are solid, they're absolutely sound, and the economic case for getting rid of Trident is so obvious, especially at a time of austerity. So if the economic case is so solid, then why haven't we won yet? And this is what I've been thinking about since Saturday. Because for me, I think that this will never, ever, ever be about money for the British state. It is not a question of economics for them. Seen Douglas Alexander happily capping child benefit rather than cutting nuclear missiles. It's not about pounds for them, it's about power. That's what it's really about for them, and that's where we need to challenge the question of Trident. Because it's not about keeping us safe. We know that Trident doesn't provide the security, because what we need protected from is extreme free market ideology from people like George Osborne, from people like David Cameron, from the feeble opposition of the Labour Party. These are the things that we need protected from, not phantom enemies abroad. And what's going to make people feel safe is a decent social settlement that doesn't stigmatise them or discriminate against them. What makes I speak to people in workplaces all the time who tell me that what would make them feel safe is having health and safety legislation enforced, or a decent wage, or not a 0-hour contract. That's what provides security. And Trident, like I said, it's about power. It's about the UK on the international stage. And Britain has been an aggressive global player. Illegal war, backing dictatorships, support for apartheid states. It's slavish adherence to the special relationship with the US. And that seems quite overwhelming at times when you think of the history of Britain, its role internationally, all of these things. But for the last 2 years, when we all worked together, we all stood united and went out and campaigned together, we had the establishment on the back foot. We had them on the back foot. There was chaos, there was panic. In the real core of power in Westminster, you had all the leaders coming up and panicking, and all the Labour MPs up to see Scotland one last time. Yeah, I actually can't help myself. But this is the point, is that something has happened in the last 2 years that actually does give us great traction in Scotland to challenge Trident. And I think it's really heartening to hear that there is other things happening internationally, that there's a sea change there, but we've got a huge opportunity. And I'll finish on this, because for me, this is a democratic issue. It's a democratic issue because this is a pure distortion of democracy. Like, how warped do things have to be to spend more money on nuclear weapons, to keep your seat at the table of the boys' club? How low, that is just, this is a democratic issue. It needs to be challenged like that. That's how we should be speaking about it. This is about power and democracy. And during this general election, the Scrap Trident Coalition are encouraging their supporters to vote for candidates who say no to Trident. And in this general election particularly, it's like no other that we've had, because it's combined with what's happened in Scotland, people waking up what's going on, huge crisis in Westminster. And I think that we've got a new opportunity to challenge that cross-party consensus that says Trident is necessary. And I'll finish where I started, and that was on Saturday, when it felt different, because we'd protested before. I've been on anti-Trident demos before, and I've been to the blockades before, but something is different this time. I think that the information is starting to get out there, but I agree with you, I think we need to do more to get these facts and figures out. But the process that we've been through the referendum means a renewed opportunity to do something different in May. And I think we're closer than we ever have been to winning on this issue. First, on the streets and in communities and in workplaces, but also at the political level as well. And I really hope that you'll try to come to the blockade on the 13th on Monday, because I think we want to send a loud and clear message that we don't want Trident in Scotland's waters, and we don't want it in anyone else's either. I think that's the message that we want to send to people. And I really believe that the days of the British state's nuclear weapons system are numbered. And I think, for me, in Radical Independence, now I'm not a member of any political party, I don't see my role as being in a political party that's in the general election, because for me, there has to be a moment where we say, this is a red line. And yes, the SNP have been driving this issue, but we need to make sure there is no room for a U-turn. The pressure on whoever we elect to go down to Westminster is going to be colossal, and we need to make sure that we are ready to say, this is not up for negotiation. There's no way that that can happen. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to do something quite special next month, that we can say enough to nuclear weapons and that we can win, and that win isn't just a victory for people in Scotland, it's a victory for people the world over.
That was terrific, thank you. Can I suggest that we have a 5-minute break and then we'll have half an hour questions and answers after that? Just give people a chance to, people already moving.
Could somebody please sign me up very quickly?
Okay, 5 minutes folks, we'll start again at just before 5 to 8. What are your plans for goodbye, John?
I was just wondering. Yeah, I was involved quite a lot in lobbying around that SNP conference that made the decision. In terms of why did they try to make that change, I think the impetus was coming from the MPs, Angus Roberts and some of the MPs, who then live in this Westminster bubble, for whom not being a member of NATO, how can anybody possibly think about not being in NATO? It just, you know, I think they were to some extent out of touch with most of the feeling in the party. The other thing that was behind it was James Mitchell, the pollster, did a survey of SNP views, and that would appear to indicate that SNP membership was willing to abandon NATO. But at the conference itself, and in the run-up to it, you certainly got the feeling that they misjudged it, because, and I don't know this, but I suspect that Nicola and others weren't very keen, but they did sign up to it. On the assumption, I think, that it was just going to sail through, it wasn't very contentious. But what actually happened was partly, I mean, you know, we were lobbying around other things happening. It was very close. I don't think they would have gone down that road if they'd known it was only going to be passed by a few votes. And because, can't be saying, the membership has shifted, I think when they come back to it again, they're going to have big trouble. But the difficulty is that within the party, they might not want to have another discussion, you know.
Can I just comment that as one of those who opposed the move on the day, along with a number of other members of the SNP branches locally, I was just thought I was astonished at the way the vote went. I didn't actually think it was going to go that way. But I also think that there are dangers in a much enlarged party in that you just don't know what way it might go if it was put to the vote again, particularly to a vote of all members. That's the worry I've got.
I was going to say, I heard long debate about it and so on. I think it was all rather more grubby than any of that. I believe that via Norway word came from the US that any intervention of the SNP to deny Scottish membership of NATO would result in America taking a position against Scottish independence, and I think that's what the grubby deal in actual fact was. I think that's what it was all about, and I think that's what the McGrady thing is all about as well.
That's actually what stopped me joining the SNP. I like the SNP.
Months by Councillor Walsh, the leader of the council, because they wanted to clean it up. As it happens, nothing, as far as we know, catastrophic has happened, but we don't know what kind of lower level damage has been caused. Yes?
It's slightly off topic, but staying on the same stream. If we actually manage to achieve this ideal goal of scrapping Trident and the danger it poses to us, is it within the scope of this movement that we'd stop nuclear power, or do you not see that as much of a threat? Because in my view, as long as there are nuclear power plants, there is the ability to create weapon-based plutonium, and there will never truly be a reassurance that our government will not go back on its promise, or any government, until the ability to create weapons-based plutonium is eradicated.
Okay, either of you like to respond?
Yeah, no, I think certainly Scott said his point of view we're opposed to nuclear power, and we just have to keep an eye on things in Scotland. I mean, the political situation in Scotland does seem to be quite strong opposition, and the no realistic proposals for the nuclear power station. The link to nuclear weapons is possibly slightly more complex now in that they already have the stocks of plutonium. Highly enriched uranium is a bit more tricky. Almost certainly this stuff is still coming from the States. So the highly enriched uranium is so the submarines are nuclear armed, but they're also nuclear powered. So they need highly enriched uranium on an ongoing basis to fuel the submarines. And it's 98% enriched. It's difficult to get hold of. And I think that bit of the system is dependent on the constant supply. The plutonium, they recycle, they take plutonium out of old bombs and use new ones. But it's undoubtedly the case that it's just like,
I don't know if everybody knows that just a few days ago a law was passed in Parliament about nuclear waste, and dispute, does everybody know about
Yeah, but
that?
it's been done since the 80s, yeah.
That in fact, just before it broke up, very quietly, without any public debate at all, a law was passed to allow the government to dump nuclear waste, bury nuclear waste, anywhere in the country that they want to, and local authorities will not have any say in this whatsoever.
Scotland.
So that's the latest, very quiet, subtle movement that's going on. And that's all the nuclear waste from the last 50 years, which includes weapons, medical aid, and nuclear power stations.
Jimmy?
Well, just back to the NATO thing in the SNP, I'm Jimmy Bell, I'm an SNP member. I watched the voting and that was an exciting day on the best debate the SNP ever had, I think. And I noticed that the First Minister then, Alex Salmond, voted for it. There's quite a lot of pressure to vote for it, I think, in that day. But looking at the change of leadership now to Nicola Sturgeon, she'll be her own person. But at the conference, the last conference there, it was the most exciting. There was a different atmosphere. There was loads of young people there, and with the membership increasing, they're going to be under, I think the SNP are going to be under pressure to change the thinking, the old traditional SNP thinking. And looking at that conference with the young people there that were standing up, things going on, and it was an amazing change. So I think the change is going to come with the new leader and the massive membership we've got. I think there'll be a lot of talk about it. I think they would look at it again. I don't know.
Good. It's always good to hear an optimistic view.
Wow.
Good. Anyone else? This lady here.
Just speaking to one or two people here, but do not know what was a Russian nuclear submarine has been on fire up in the Arctic and the Archangel this week. I mean, that just shows you that the danger of the things when they're just sitting or being worked on. I mean, and that's another thing they were saying. People don't realise how close this is to Glasgow and how close it is to us here, because they probably don't do that. I don't know how sophisticated the work is to do on them. Fascinating.
We just done quite a lot of work on safety subterranean. I mean, there has been a major fire, a really serious fire on the something was quite in Liverpool in the 70s, Rock Temple. But it has happened. If you look at the history of the Russian nuclear fleet, they've had about every conceivable form of accident, including missiles exploding and submarines sinking. This is anything that can go wrong with the US or that has gone wrong at some point with Russia. The number and scale of the incidents in Britain compared with Russia is less, but nevertheless, just in terms of a risk approach, these things are all possible. You know, the more serious types of accidents can actually happen here. There are certainly very large numbers of accidents at the lower level, and one of the more recent stuff we've worked with Rob Edwards on is the number of these low-level incidents happening at Ainslie is increasing. You know, so there actually are more of these things. They've got all sorts of rules and regulations. Anytime they reach stores, they have to record them, and that's happening more. And some of the reports will basically show problems with safety culture. Basically, there are two major sides. One is the ship lift. The ship lift lifts a Trident submarine out of the water with its missiles on board. What we know is if an aircraft falls out of the sky and hits that structure when there is a submarine in it, it is assumed that the submarine will collapse, and there is then a series of events which ends up in dispersal of radioactive material. Now they then say that you don't have to worry about that because the chance of an aircraft accidentally falling out of the sky and shipping just, you know, it's like the chance of an aircraft falling and hitting the sea is very low. What that doesn't then take into account clearly is the possibility that somebody deliberately flies an aircraft into that structure. And I suspect with the crew force, with the handle jetty, the risks are higher, but unfortunately can't get the equivalent. risk assessments, because everything around Newport is just far more sensitive. The ship lift, we've actually not lost the detailed assessments and calculations.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm Stephen and I just live up the road from Dunoon, and I confess that we actually moved to Dunoon by choice about 15 years ago. And we thought, where's the safest place to be in Scotland? No, seriously though, I don't think I gave it a second thought that we lit. To be honest with you, if there was a serious incident here, again, it doesn't really concern me that that we would be the first ones to be wiped out. But what does concern me is that there's so many nuclear warheads focused on one of the major cities in the world, namely Moscow. That's news to me. And I must admit, I thought that the nuclear weapons that we had were just floating around in the oceans, ready to be deployed in the event that there was an attack. But it's quite interesting to know that these warheads are actually intended for a purpose. And it's certainly not my intention. It would never be my intention. And I'm sure that most people in Scotland would not be wanting to be an aggressive force, an aggressor to another country. It's one thing in defence, but quite another being an aggressor. Just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Yes.
I want to talk a little bit more about the coming general election. When we had the referendum, there were various groups that had significant membership, for example, Labour for Independence. And it seems to me that some, because many of the proposals that are coming out from the unionist parties are worth serious consideration. Is there any way in which we could encourage even a small number of significant people in the unionist parties to do a no-nuclear stance? So although the party stance officially would be so, some of these serious candidates for election would be taking a bit of public force.
In terms of where we are with this election, it's quite complicated. Some of the better ones, taking North Ayrshire and Ireland, Katie was speaking of Saturday demo, Sandra Osborne and Ayr, Ian Davison, who we don't the first time to consistently. But it's a wee bit unfortunate. Some of those, like Katie and Sandra, are putting these receipts, and we're left to elect Jim Murphy, who's more likely to be elected. And this Alan Reid here at Gailen Butte, he's shifted more pro-Trident, actually.
Yeah.
Because the Lib Dems have shifted their position, because Lib Dems 2 years back don't want like-for-like replacement, and actually even getting rid of them might be one of the options. You know, we want alternatives, and the alternatives include not having them. Whereas that debate in January in the House of Commons, Reid was one of the ones saying, well, it's all changed now, you know, these alternatives aren't viable anymore, we've got to have new nuclear power.
The Liberal Democrats in Gailen Butte have always supported Faslane and Coolport in defiance of the party's position. That's because it gets them elected to Westminster here. This is our big problem in this seat, is the Helensburgh conurbation, which is the biggest population of Gailen Butte, that continually votes to save the base. And it's saving the base on the basis of wrong information. The 22,000 or 400,000 people work there, or the whole population of the whole of Gael works. You know, it's all nonsense. But this is it. Alan Reid is unlikely to change that position, though hopefully he will be in position to have no position very shortly.
Okay, Manel.
I think we just can carry on from a point which Adam was saying about intentions, and the fact that these weapons were targeted at the city of Moscow worried him. But I think you've got to get across the nature of these weapons, that it's a first strike thing, and we only have them to completely annihilate this, you know, apparent enemy in Moscow. So, I mean, I think we really need to stress the point that this idea of deterrence, as you were saying, using that word, is, you know, it's a red herring. It's nothing to do with the nuclear weapons.
I think if I just add to that, we speak to Beryl, who's ex-Trident officer. I mean, the system requires them constantly doing routines. But, you know, when they go out on these patrols, so there's constantly somebody out on patrol for 7 days at a time. They're not just sitting there twiddling the thumbs. They regularly get messages which are saying, prepare to launch. And somebody's standing there, how quickly can they do it? So they're doing the drills. They're constantly doing the drills so that they can actually launch quickly. They're checking all the systems so that they can do it if they have to. You know, and if you hear the people involved in it, that's for them to say, well, we'll just have them but not be ready to use them and they can just sit there. That doesn't work. You know, part of the whole thing about deterrence is you've got to be ready to actually do it. But it's pretty scary that, you know, we don't just possess nuclear weapons, we've actually got them there on patrol with, you know, where the targets don't sit in the missile, because as we say the detargeted, that just means the missile itself physically is not a real target, it's got to point to the ocean. But the targets are sitting on the computer next to it, somebody presses the button.
And we can assume the targets in Moscow are pointing the other way. I would imagine.
And I don't know if you've seen Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
The whole theory of Dr. Strangelove is this automated system.
Yeah.
And that's almost what they did. They have a semi-automated system. So, and the guy in the central command post in Russia, or a number of people, can automatically launch all the missiles remotely.
If you look at Catch-22, we could blow our cities up and they can blow their own up. Save a lot of expense, wouldn't it?
We can choose the areas.
Well, we do still, I mean, and I think it's just because you see these things floating past.
Yeah.
There is a sense in which we do still live in this Doctor Strange world, the Strangelove world on the brink of nuclear, and you know, what's the other one, the war game, with the kid gets confused. Those things are still real today. They were real at the time, but they're actually
just as real.
Most people just aren't aware of it. But the Cold War systems, they operate on minutes warning. You know, certainly both Russia and America. Our subs we say are on days' notice, but actually the day's notice can be taken up to 15 minutes notice at any time.
Just going back to the comment there about first strike weapon, I mean, those of you who remember the Falklands War, there were two quite separate theories going about. One was that the UK had persuaded the Americans to allow them to reprogram the targeting to hit every city in Argentina. And the other story was that the Americans, being relatively friendly with Argentina, didn't allow them to do it. So no matter what way you look at it, it's just unbelievable. One is it's completely non-independent, which was part of John's point, and the other is that it becomes a first strike weapon that would have been used if we get into big trouble, which was virtually happened. So
one of the things, a lot of it is just thinking things through logically, and it's in terms of the software. I'm almost certain the software is at least rigged so that you can't hit America. Because obviously you're supplying Britain with this system that actually you could fire missiles in the United States, and if nothing, there's a wee line in the missiles fly.
Maybe around about Helensburgh. I, a bit like Steve, moved my family here 14 years ago because I thought it was a nice, healthy place to bring up a young family. And, you know, and there's a lot of positives, but it's also, over the years, I've started to feel guilty. You know, like, my son is very like to go camping at Argentina, and I keep saying, don't paddle in the water, you know, because it's a big worry. But I grew up in East Kilbride, a big town. I went to a big school there. And I cannot think of my entire childhood of knowing of a child that contracted or died of cancer. Living in this town, it's a regular occurrence. Childhood cancer, you know, and you know, it might just be because I work in the health industry, I see it a wee bit more, but I don't think so, because like I say, I grew up in a big town, went to a big school, can't think of, you know, a single child during that time that died of cancer. But it's a sadly, I'm just an regular occurrence here. I'm just wondering if anybody's actually compiled proper statistics, because that's something I think is very important to get out there.
Well, the health boards do compile these things, but there are often other factors that they will attribute to particular clusters of disease. So hard to say. Alistair.
It's just to piggyback on an idea earlier before we leave the room, if we can actually get something coordinated around CNG, so we can actually have a local branch here. And we can actually, if there's a central point, then we can actually collate this information and hand it out to whoever needs it.
I think that's a good point.
I think in a practical sense, if there's a small group of 3 or 4 people who want to say, you know, you've got a list of small group of names, that would be,
Well,
you know.
we've got a very big list of names, haven't we?
Yeah, certainly there would be no problem at all with the forward shop being in fact the centre of getting a C&D group together. I mean, we've got a big loop, there's hundreds on our loop, and you know, and it would certainly be no problem at all advertising and building something together. No problem at all. And I think I have to say most people in our area of operation would be very, very keen to be involved actually.
So how would that be done, John, if we
Well,
wanted
if
to
you
do
keep in
that?
touch with the office, the other slightly important thing, which is a part of the plug, it's linked to WeMix Scottish CND membership as well, in terms of what we
Well,
do.
if I can get all the information from you, I'll make sure it's well displayed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Kat.
New avenues have opened up in Scotland, particularly with media, there are spaces that we can now use to get our stories across. I think the common space has actually been one of the big successes of that. I think like young people doing serious investigative journalism, and there have been several stories that were ignored by like the mainstream press for days, and they went out and they got the story, got the information and pushed it out into the mainstream, and I think that gives me quite a lot of optimism that we can start getting the issue of Trident out there. And just on that, like, I think some of the stories are terrifying. I mean, of people being poisoned by this system. I mean, this is the thing for me with Trident, is that this isn't a single issue. Trident isn't just one thing, it's not just like one demand that you would get rid of that, because it cuts across every single argument. It's about austerity, it's about international relations, it's about Scotland having a capacity for a bright, civilised future, whether that's energy or health, all these things, and encapsulated in Trident. It all comes down to this as like being one of the major overarching things. And just like on the general election, I know that there's like some MPs, well, prospective MPs, who are making warmer noises to having an anti-Trident position. There are good MPs like Katie Clark, who has consistently voted against Trident and austerity as well. My concern about this is that that's not the direction of Scottish Labour, because with the leadership of Jim Murphy, the investiture of McTernan, I mean, these are two men who are not going to try and undo the New Labour European project of building links with America. They're not, I can't ever see that happening. And Jim Murphy might be giving off soft vibes, but I have no doubts about it. This is a man who's driven by militaristic instincts. And McTernan, of course, being an unapologetic Blairite who still supports the war in Iraq. You know, I see that there's MP candidates who are making good noises about this. You know, Jim's trying to be quite soft on it, but what they stand for is I mean, it's basically the opposite. And there's part of me that I don't quite trust the Labour Party to do anything about Trident, even if there's a swathe of pro-independence MPs who are all anti-Trident that go down there. I think there has to be pressure from outside of the Parliament as well, and there has to be big mobilisations to make that happen. I mean, are the British elite really going to let Ed Miliband get rid of Trident without any external pressure? Like, that's why I think it's important that regardless of your political affiliations or like me, like in none, that there is a mass of people who will constantly be shoving this back on the agenda and making sure that the
You're darn right.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to wind this up, I'm sorry, but I'd like maybe to give John one last word as well, because again he'd like to get the 10 to 9 buried, so John.
No, I think that's all okay. I think we've covered things largely. It just, I think it is still an exciting time of actually doing things politically. And I'm one of these folk who really enjoyed the lesson of saying this is the most wonderful time of our life, being in the referendum campaign. But it's a simple thing for us. But there's also a feeling at the moment that we're still living in this very sort of dynamic time when the things can happen. Yeah. And it's this sense that ordinary people can actually do things. You know, we're not reliant on these people behind closed doors deciding things. We can actually say this is what we want ourselves.
Well, could I just allow our speakers to go? If we want to stay for a wee while, we can do. But I'd just like you to give a big thanks to Cat Boyd and John Ainslie. And of course, our first speaker, who is now vanished, who I've forgotten about. So, anyway, thank you very much, everybody. But we can stay on for a little while, I think. So thank you. And remember the buckets.
Oh, the buckets, yes, get the buckets up to the door.
Folks, I just disappear. I think I must say, Scotland only has one enemy, and we all know who that is.
Will you just
They will not hesitate to
Just 1 minute, folks. Rob's got a wee suggestion to make. Just to kind of push this on.
I know we can publicise through the earshot, but if people particularly want to be informed or involved in a anti-Trident CND type group, if we have a piece of paper on the front and we sign up, then we can make sure everyone gets the information. So if anyone wants to put their name up, have we got a piece of paper?
Well, we'll use the back of one of these.
All right.
Thank you, John.